Welcome to this month's Mobile Roundup. First off, the highlights from the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. Last month I previewed a few of the announcements that were expected to be made there, so let's see if any of them came true. There's been a big push among smartphone vendors to get their smartphones out before the autumn when the iPhone 5 is expected to be released. And so most of the major vendors released a swanky new smartphone to try and compete before the iPhone comes out. HTC's mystery phone turned out to be the HTC One X, with an upgrade to their user interface, which gives their version of Android a new fresh feel. Nokia released the European version of the Lumia 900, plus the PureView 808, which has an astonishing 41 megapixel camera. Sony launched the new Xperia range, Panasonic the Iluga, and LG released a whole range of handsets which will be upgradable to Android 5 later on this year. LG is pushing to be the next official Android phone, and some of the handsets look to push the very top end of that market, where LG traditionally hasn't been very strong. So most of the things that I talked about last month did happen, but there were a couple of interesting new entries that people didn't really see coming. Huawei, who's a Chinese manufacturer, knocked everyone's socks off with the Ascend D, billed as the world's fastest smartphone, and even Acer had a strong showing with its Cloud Mobile. So amongst all these phones, what really stood out? Well, firstly there's the fact that many of the phones that are on show at the Mobile World Congress won't be available until May or June this year. By announcing them now, phone manufacturers want to get people pumped up about the products and raise a bit of buzz about them. But a lot of people were disappointed. 3 months is a long time in mobile handset development, especially with the shadow of the iPhone 5 around the corner. Having said that, there was a lot of positive feedback. Companies like LG, Acer and Huawei are doing the right things when it comes to processor speeds, form formats, screen sizes and cameras, and many of these mobiles will be running Android 4, the new and improved operating system. But the fragmentation of Android may turn out to be its undoing. A new Android version is going to be announced later this year, but so far only 1 or 2% of Android phones are running the latest version, which was announced last October. Part of the reason for this is that many vendors have put their own user interface onto Android, so when a new version of Android comes out, they need to update their user interface to match it, and that takes time. This hasn't stopped Android's share of the market becoming even larger, and its share of the tablet market is rising as well at the expense of Apple, but more on that later on. One of the big new areas in mobile is hybrids, a sort of mid-sized device that's bigger than a phone but smaller than a tablet. At the MWC there was a range of these announced, an updated BlackBerry Playbook, the non-widescreen LG Optimus View and a 10-inch version of the Samsung Galaxy Tab 2. It remains to be seen whether this size of device will succeed on their own, or whether it will fall down the crack between pocket-sized smartphones and tablet-sized devices. So the big news from Apple this month is the new iPad. Rather than being called the iPad 3 or the iPad HD as expected, they've simply called it the iPad. So is this the way forward it's going to go with their devices? With the iPhone, is the iPhone 5 simply going to be the iPhone? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But the new iPad fulfilled all the hype and not much more, with a faster processor, slightly better camera and a Retina display. It's another upgrade to the iPad as the iPad 2 was, rather than any new huge departure. Obviously this upsets some of the people out there in the blogosphere who want Apple to keep bringing out exciting new kit, but it's in Apple's nature to innovate and then to refine, and this is another step in that process. iPhone 5 rumours are flying about, possibly about bigger screens, although that's been largely discredited, better cameras and things like that, but it's still too early to tell. But you can be sure that as soon as there is any news later in 2012, you'll hear about it right here on this video. Nokia's announcement a year ago that they'll be using a Windows phone system instead of the Symbian operating system, it raised a few eyebrows, but in the past month the Windows Phone 7 system has started to outsell Symbian, mostly due to the success of Nokia's Lumia. Google have announced a new privacy policy which affects the whole web, not just mobile, but it's a very sensible move. If you use Google products either on the mobile or on the desktop, you'll have agreed to the individual privacy policies for each product, but probably have very little idea about what's being said in each one. at least by aggregating them, Google, which has bundles of data about you anyway, is being open about how much they do have and how they can use it. They say it's to give you a better search experience, but we all know it's so they can make more money from us in terms of their paid search results. And according to Ofcom, Orange has taken the unwelcome title of most complained about operator for 2011, probably due to their tariff price rise announcement in November. They overtook Three, who had been the most complained about for most of the year, and O2 is the least complained about operator. But still, mobile operators are still 10 times lower than complaints about landline and broadband operators, where TalkTalk comes out at the bottom of the pile. Telefonica, who own O2, have also announced that they're searching for the European Steve Jobs by launching a project to find 10 technology startup companies, which they'll set up in a London office and fund for 6 months. It's a sign, I think, that mobile phone carriers are starting to think beyond phone masts and text messages. And finally, here's a roundup of some of the apps that have been taking the world by storm this month. The Apple App Store hit its 25 billionth download on the 14th of March, with one lucky Chinese punter receiving a $10,000 iTunes voucher for being the 25 billionth downloader. One hotly anticipated release was Clear, which is a to-do list app. There was a lot of buzz surrounding its launch. It comes from a very reputable app manufacturer. It was supposed to be easy to use. It's touted as making it the easiest way to organise your life. But in the end, it doesn't really do anything that Reminders doesn't, and people have been rather underwhelmed by it. Sparrowmail is a really popular email application on the Mac, and their iPhone app, which has just been released, may well be replacing the built-in email app on the iPhone as well. It's well designed, it works well with most of the main email providers, and if you already use the Mac app, it's a great fit. One thing that people have been wasting hours and hours of time on is Draw Something, available for both Android and for iPhone. It's a Pictionary-style game where you need to, draw something for the other person to guess. And Zynga, who's the company behind Farmville and other online games, has just bought OMG Pop, who are Draw Something's creators, for $200 million. And Instagram, photography's answer to Twitter, has a beta version of its app for Android. 27 million people use Instagram so far on the iPhone, sharing photos on Facebook, on Twitter, and to other Instagram users. And adding Android's user base to the mix will let everyone see what all the fuss is about. That's a great app that has potential for a lot of take-up. And lastly, the biggest selling app of all time is back as well, with Angry Birds Space. It still has the same theme, that evil pigs have invaded, the Angry Birds need to kick them out. But this time, instead of slingshots and gravity, there's planets, black holes and moons to help you direct your birds exactly where you want them. Another money spinner from the Finnish company that's now estimated to be worth almost $8 billion. So that's it for mobile this month. Catch up with me again next month for all the news in the mobile world.